Yeah. And without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce, and I'm going to pull up their slides here. We've got Cameron Reisenberger, who is the Teen Services Outreach Librarian for the Pikes Peak Library District. We have Beth Christ, who is a colleague of mine here at the Colorado State Library. She is the Youth and Family Services Consultant. And as I stated before, I don't always do this, but I am actually going to be presenting today as well. And I am Christine Krieger, and I am the Professional Development Consultant for the Colorado State Library. So welcome once again to all of you. Colorado is one of the wealthiest, healthiest states in the nation, but it also has a higher teen and child death rate than the national average, a rate that has grown worse over the past 2 decades.
Suicide is the leading cause of death for Coloradans ages 10 to 24, with 21 deaths per 100,000 teens in 2017.
Colorado ranked 5th in the nation in terms of suicide death rates and has consistently been in the top 10 since 2009.
So as you can see from the headlines that are on your screen, and those are from actual newspapers and other publications, as well as some of the stats that we gave, teen suicide is a growing problem in Colorado as well as nationwide. Since we live in Colorado, and Colorado has a teen suicide rate higher than the national average, a lot of the stats and stuff that we're going to be talking about are Colorado-centric. However, as you'll see in just a minute, teen suicide is a national problem as well. And the community impact of youth suicides is profound, with far-reaching social and emotional effects. And the libraries in which we all work, obviously, are a critical part of the communities that this is affecting. So our goal today is really to bring more awareness to teen mental health and teen suicide nationwide, to share some research from Colorado communities, and to brainstorm together ways that libraries can help affect change. That said, we do want to state at the outset that we by no means feel that libraries and library staff will or should solve the problem of teen suicide. Rather, we hope to be part of a larger community conversation. So we're going to be spending a lot of time today reflecting, sharing, and brainstorming. There may also be some things that we see here and talk about today that some of you might find triggering, so we won't be offended if at any time you need to step away for a few minutes or log off. As I mentioned before, we are archiving today.
Okay, and this is Beth Christ. Hello, thank you for joining us today. As Christine started us out saying, we have looked at this specifically in Colorado because we have a higher rate here, as you'll see in a minute, than the national statistics show. But I wanted to start out, as we do have a national audience here, talking about the suicide rate in the U.S., across the U.S. So here is some dramatic graph here showing the stats nationwide. The suicide rate for people aged 10 to 24 rose 56% between 2007 and 2017, rising particularly between 2013 and 2017. And you can see here the differences by age group. It's really pretty shocking here. And to break this down a little bit, youth suicide rates are higher in rural areas than urban. Male youths are 4 times more likely than females to die by suicide. On the other hand, female youths are twice as likely as males to attempt suicide. 9th graders are twice as likely to attempt suicide as 12th graders. And a 2019 study found that youth living in counties with the highest poverty levels are 37% more likely to die by suicide than those living in the least impoverished countries. And Kathleen asks a good question. These are actual deaths by suicide, not attempts. So, good question for that. So as shocking as these national suicide statistics are, here is Colorado statistics versus the U.S. So in Colorado, it's even higher. And we do encourage you to look at, if you are not from Colorado, look at the statistics for your state. They vary tremendously. by state. So here is Colorado, and here's another one on Colorado. This really breaks it down even more clearly. And again, this is deaths by suicide. And to break this down, this is just for Colorado, but there was, from the statistics, 74% were boys and 26% girls. There were 68% white, non-Hispanic, 23% Hispanic, 6% African American, and 2% Asian Pacific Islander, and 1% American Indian, shown here in Colorado. And just one more chart and statistics slide for you here. This shows how drastic it is, difference it is within a state, what the teen suicide rates are. So this is attempted suicides. This is different than the last couple of slides, but it just shows you what a profound difference there is from county to county. And again, we encourage you to look at your own state. You can pull these statistics usually from your own state and break down by county. So these are huge discrepancies here. So do look to see what it looks like in your state and in your county, even in your local area. Because again, this differs by poverty, it differs by rural versus urban, and really a host of other issues that exacerbate this issue. So now we're going to turn to a video. This is a great video done by Milwaukee, PBS Milwaukee, and it is a documentary that is produced by teens who experience mental illness. And we're just going to show you a clip of this today, but we really encourage you to watch the whole thing. It's very powerful because the entire thing is the teens speaking themselves. There are no adults present, and to hear these teens speak about their struggles with mental health in their own voice is really powerful, but it can be hard to watch. There's another really, really good documentary as well that is in some of these handouts, so we encourage that one too. It's a similar kind of teens speaking in their own voices about their mental health struggles. So I'll turn it over to Christine to talk about how to watch the video.
Okay, so Adobe Connect gets a little bit funky with video. It's probably to protect copyright, etc. So we can't necessarily play this video in the Adobe Connect room. However, you can either click, in just a minute, I'm going to have you either click on the link that is at the bottom of the video or the link in the chat. It will open in a separate window for you. You'll need to press a start button, and it'll play for just about 2 minutes because I have truncated the YouTube video. But what I want you to do is, after you watch the video and you return back to CSL in session, if you could raise your hand so that we know that you are back. And the way that you do that is in the upper kind of left-ish corner, where it looks like a person who's all white has his hand raised. There is a little drop-down arrow there, and you can raise your hand. You can see next to my name, my hand is raised, and let me know when you are back. So once again, I'm going to have you click on the video. It's about 2 minutes, and then when you come back, you will raise your hand, or you can let me know via chat that you are back. So hopefully this will work, and once again, it's just 2 minutes. And I'm lowering everybody's hands. So I think, Beth, we can go ahead and move forward. Oh, and yes. Rachel was asking a question about if the slides are available. I will post them to the CSL in Session website when I post the archive later this afternoon. So thank you for that question, so that you guys can have the statistics and whatnot as well.
So we're going to capture some of your initial thoughts on this video clip here, and if you could just type in the left chat box that's right here front and center on the screen. Just what were some of your thoughts as you watched these videos? Did anything surprise you? Did you find it any particularly moving or just any thoughts that you have. And then on the right, what implications for library service did you see when watching these young people talk about their struggles and their mental health issues? Was there anything that you could see that your library could provide for young people to help them through this? Yeah, bullying. That one of the kids was thinking about suicide at age 7. I know that is so heartbreaking. And yeah, it is. You're really proud of these kids for speaking out. That's a great point, Molly. Thanks. And people can be so mean. um, but yeah, I really encourage you too to watch this whole documentary. It they begin these 14s begin talking about their struggles and how hard it's been, and then at the end, I will not spoil it all, but they really talk about what they've done to help other teens, and it is so powerful and moving. So please, if you have the time, please watch the whole thing. It is an amazing documentary. Okay, now moving on to implications for library services. Thank Laura. Yeah, we need to help them feel like they're not alone. Um, and Monica, you bring up bullying. That happens in school and then in the library too. So definitely keeping an eye on the bullying and creating a welcoming place at the library. Absolutely. And Kathleen, the emphasis on children not being alone. That's great. Christine, connections, just connecting people, absolutely. And having appropriate books for trans people and people, teens experiencing other issues that they may feel like they're ashamed of or embarrassed about or just don't know, and they need resources for sure. I also like the idea of books as windows and books as mirrors. So kids need books to where they can see themselves reflected in the books, but also books that allow them to see windows into how other people live. So we need both of those. Rachel, we need to offer safe and trauma-informed spaces and services. Absolutely, and definitely. Nick, having staff as trusted adults is absolutely critical. Kathleen, resources on mental health issues definitely, and LGBTQIA awareness or support programs definitely. Developing personal relationships, again, that seems to be a common theme, which is wonderful. I love that, Maureen, having a variety of books available on a whole range of subjects, for sure. And watching for signs, even if they're small, overt and subtle signs. Yeah, great. Again, creating that compassionate customer service for teens. Oh, Yesenia, talking about staff training, absolutely, on mental health. That's great. And providing a safe space, Laura. Yeah. Oh, and Lauren talking about, yeah, giving kids, letting them know how valued and important they are. That's great. Oh, and Selena, I like that mental health Q&A for adults as well as for the teens. Excellent.
Yeah, I think
Laura
there's a
giving
lot
them
of really good
outlets. Yeah.
programming ideas and other things that are in here. So in the interest of time, I think we'll give you just another couple minutes, but what I can do is I can archive some of the stuff that you've brainstormed. I can kind of strip everybody's names out, but just have a list for kind of some of the things that libraries can do, and I can get that posted to the CSL in Session website as well, because these are all fabulous ideas.
They are. And once these two chat boxes go away, if you have other ideas, please type them in the main chat box on the left too. You can keep going. These just won't be up. These really are excellent ideas. Thank you.
So we do want to thank everybody for sharing your thoughts about these ideas, and as Beth said, continue to share stuff in the main chat area as well as any questions that you have as we go through, because we can make sure to capture all of that. But we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I will let you all know that kind of this next section is looking at some Colorado-specific research, but as we think about it, my hope is that there's going to be stuff that will sort of resonate with sort of everybody who is with us today. So in December 2017, the Colorado Office of the Attorney General's Office of Community Engagement hired health management associates to study 4 counties in Colorado which had experienced recent suicide clusters among middle and high school aged youth, and which had historically high rates of suicide across every age group. So these counties were El Paso, Pueblo, Mesa, and La Plata. They collected data via interviews, focus groups, including teen focus groups. So once again, their words and ideas are captured in this research. They reviewed information on current suicide prevention activities and resources in the 4 counties as well as across Colorado. They reviewed traditional and social media coverage related to suicide in the 4 counties. And they also reviewed publicly available information on school policies and procedures that were related to suicide intervention, prevention, and postvention. So this research led to a long kind of report called the Community Conversations to Inform Youth and Suicide Prevention, a study in youth suicide in 4 counties. And so obviously we don't have time to delve into this entire report. Once again, the URL is available in the handouts that are available here as well as on the CSL in Session website. It is about an 80-page report, but I do highly recommend people, even if you don't live in Colorado, kind of digging in. It's fairly easy to sort of scan some of the main ideas. But according to the report, since 2009, Colorado has seen an almost yearly increase in suicide. Other notable facts include, and I think Beth mentioned this earlier, that more females are attempting suicide, but more males are actually dying by suicide. In the 2017 Healthy Kids Colorado survey, 17% of all participating middle and high school students reported considering suicide, and 7% reported making 1 or more suicide attempts in the previous 12 months. And when it comes to LGBTQ plus youth, the numbers rise to 44.8% reported considering suicide and 19.9% attempted suicide in the previous 12 months. So those are just some stats to be aware of. In addition to describing how the data was gathered, key findings covered risk factors and barriers, facilitators and protective factors, and some recommendations. And these recommendations are not directed at libraries. They're probably more directed at schools, but really communities as a whole. But we're going to kind of walk through each one of these and just sort of get some of your initial thoughts and ideas as we move forward. So I have to apologize for all of the text on this screen, but these are some of the risk factors and barriers that were listed in the report across all 4 counties, and they're in no particular order, but I wanted to give you guys just a minute to sort of look at this, and then in the chat area, just sort of like note your initial thoughts and questions, or kind of like what comes to mind. So I'll give you and I see some people are typing, but we're just kind of looking for your initial reactions to these risk factors and barriers. Kathleen's talking about pressure and anxiety about failing. Oh yeah, that's a big problem. And I think, honestly, I think that's something that's sort of like we learn as kids and it kind of goes on up through adulthood. Yeah, the fact that suicide is kind of becoming normalized. Yeah. Social media could be a risk factor. Yeah, lack of mental health systems, especially when we're talking about, and not all of these counties are rural, but once again, if you take almost any sort of problem that an urban kind of community might have, it almost becomes exponentialized, if that's a word, when you're talking about rural, because they just have access to fewer and fewer resources. And I know I'm missing some stuff, but lack of mental health providers, loneliness and acceptance, I think that plays a huge part. And it's odd because I think we think of teens as being on their devices a lot. But what I'm reading in some of the literature, and once again, this isn't just for teens, but also adults, that loneliness, even though we have kind of tech ways of reaching out to people, loneliness is becoming sort of an epidemic in our society. So that's a good point. Generational poverty, yes. And Lauren's talking about compassion fatigue, and once again, that's not a problem just for teens, sort of like seeing maybe what their peers are going through, but also for teachers, librarians, social workers, anybody sort of dealing with these populations. Yeah. Oh, and social media, meaning that there's not a break from peers. And I like that, Susan. Knowing that we can create opportunities and be that one connection to a caring adult, I think is very powerful. Yeah, I think that's kind of why some of us do what we do, and it doesn't have to be big. Yeah, a stigma associated with help seeking, and I think that was mentioned a couple times. And once again, I'd say that that plays out really well for adults. So continue sharing your thoughts on that. I'm now going to bring up the slide that talks about some of the protective factors that help. And kind of will do the same thing. Take a look at this and then share some of your thoughts or ideas, impressions. Yeah, and I think Andrew was talking about some of the lack of coping skills and resilience in face of challenges, kind of from the previous thing. Yeah, and Mercedes is asking a really good question. What do you do for teens who kind of aren't interested in anything? And I think, once again, sometimes it's such a tough age. I'm like thinking back to when I was a teenager, and like everything was like almost like a life or death kind of question. What do I want to do? What do my friends do? That's a good question. So if anybody has ideas to help Mercedes and the rest of us kind of, well, how would you reach out to a teen who's maybe not interested in things? And Kathleen is talking about, yeah, like they need access to stuff. So a lot of these protective factors are having extracurricular activities that they could sign up for, access to faith-based organizations, access to nature and outdoors, which once again, from community to community, access can be a really big problem. Kids being alone and parents working all the time, lack of support. And lack of interest in things actually, as Kathleen said, can be a symptom of depression, sort of like it's hard to be motivated to do anything. It's important for these protective factors to be cost-free, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm having this conversation as people who work in libraries, because, you know, unless you have overdue fines or whatnot, you don't have to necessarily pay to be at the library and to hang out. Normalizing mental health, yeah, letting them know that it's a normal thing and they're not crazy. Teen programs to teach emotional regulation. Oh, go ahead, Cameron.
I want to point out what Emily said a few ticks up, and she says it's striking how many more risks and barriers there are than protective factors. That's a really great.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the first things I noted. It's kind of like there should be so many more protective factors than risk factors. Yeah, and once again, there's also that kind of constant problem of like, how do you actually entice kids to come into the library? You know, what kind of programs, you know, even if you ask them what kind of programs they want, sometimes they still don't come. So these are all great thoughts and ideas. So the last thing we're going to take just a quick look at, but feel free to continue kind of adding some of your thoughts in the chat area, are the recommendations. And the report came up with 8 different recommendations. I've narrowed it down to 6 here because these were the 6 that I felt had maybe some links to services and things that libraries could provide. So we want you just to take a minute to look these over. And once again, you can sort of note your thoughts and impressions, but also maybe think about like, how might this tie into maybe things that you are already doing at the library or things that you could easily do. Once again, I don't think any of us is looking for a lot more work, but I think that there are a lot of things that we already are doing that can actually help quite a bit. So yeah, including resources that are low or cost-free, such as counseling services at universities. And once again, maybe having the library market where those services are. Mindfulness and meditation classes tailored to teens. I like that. Because once again, like they're kind of testing the boundaries and they're trying to figure all of this stuff out. And I think that that's a great idea. And once again, more programs about emotional self-regulation and meditation. One of the first things that I noticed is really kind of prioritize the relationship building between adults and youth. And I think, I mean, realistically, that just stems from basic customer service. So kind of getting to know people's names and treating teenagers who come in your library as if they're just as important as the adults are and that kind of thing. So really simple things. So Jenny's talking about last year they kind of focused around mental wellness, mostly geared towards adults, but once again, you could probably repurpose a lot of that information for teens. An open house art program centered around starting mental health conversations. That's fabulous. That's a great idea. Trying to destigmatize mental health issues by being open about your own. Yeah, I think that's true too. It's like if we actually really like understood how prevalent mental illness, or even if you don't even think of it as mental illness, kind of some of these anxiety and depression and all of this stuff it happens more often than we think, and so it kind of is normal, so we should be able to talk about it. Yeah. And how to implement programs that kind of focus on strategies and building resilience and coping and that kind of stuff. Yeah, these are great. And I see that multiple people are typing. We'll give just maybe another minute or two before we move on. Multiple pathways to success. I really like that because, you know, like I said, if they're maybe struggling in school, but school is sort of what we've all been told is sort of your ticket to success, but that's not necessarily the case. There's internships and there's other things, STEM careers and those kinds of things. Programs aimed at de-stressing in a no homework zone. Yeah, something that's just fun. I mean, honestly, I remember being a teenager and there wasn't a whole lot of fun because I was working and going to school and like I kind of like already a mini adult. Successful adults share where maybe they thought that they'd really screwed up, but like things turned out okay. Teen yoga. Oh, these are great. And just posting information about Colorado Crisis Services or services and partnerships in your area. Yeah, these are great. Oh, and October 10th being World Mental Health Day, making displays, programming. Yeah. All right, we'll keep these ideas going, but we're going to shift gears just a little bit again. And once again, I can capture all of these ideas in the chat and make it available on the CSL in Session website after, because you guys are sharing such fabulous ideas, which is what we love about CSL in Session. So now I'm going to turn it over to Cameron, who is once again from the Pikes Peak Library District. And Cameron is going to talk about some of the work that he has done.
All right. Hello, everyone. I know this is kind of a lot to take in, but we don't expect libraries to solve this problem, and we certainly don't expect you as library staff to become counselors or therapists or read all the research that you can. But what can you do? So that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today. And before I get there, I do want to share a quick story about why this work is important to me. Because it's certainly not something I thought I would spend as much time as I do on when I became a librarian. But when I was in graduate school, I supervised two small residence hall libraries that were in the basements of some of the campus dorm buildings, including a staff of 12 undergraduate library clerks. And during that time, one of my clerks sadly died by suicide. And when that happens on a college campus, you're probably familiar. They bring in the counseling center to kind of talk through with everybody their options for help and support. But they also leave fairly quickly. So I know in my work on campus there, I always wanted to bring in the counseling center again during high stress times, just to have a little bit extra support in the dorm buildings for the students. So when I arrived in Colorado to start the job that I have now, and learned of this growing problem of teen suicide, I knew I wanted to get involved. And as I said, I work for the Pikes Peak Library District. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with PLD, we're located in El Paso County, Colorado, which was one of the counties that was studied in the Community Conversations to Inform Youth Suicide study. We have 15 locations that range from kind of a tiny mountain town to out in the prairie. And there's about 650,000 people in our service district. And these are some of the things that I do in my work here. And I've kind of arranged them from with levels of involvement in mind. So depending on what your capacity is at your location, hopefully there's something in here that could help you with the teens in your area. And the first thing that you might think about doing is providing informational resources in visible areas of your library building. We have some of the ones that I do here at PPLD up on the screen. On the left-hand side of the page, there's a Tough Topics for Teens handout. It talks about how librarians want to respect your privacy and includes call number ranges for some of the difficult issues that teens might be facing. And it also includes safe teen phone numbers on the other side for local organizations where they can get help. These kinds of things are probably the easiest thing that you could do in your library. The Tough Topics bookmark in particular is something that I've seen in a lot of libraries, and it's just a little sign to the teens that might be struggling with some of these things that you are a trusted source of information and help. Even if you've never had a teen ask you about depression or substance use or anything like that, they have these questions either for themselves or their peers, and they just might not be sure how to ask or who they trust to ask. We also include book lists. We have an informational nonfiction book list, and we also make sure to have a fiction book list as well that features characters that are either struggling with mental illness or living with mental illness. And Beth talked a little bit about earlier the importance of windows and doors in fiction and the power that representation has when you read either about something that reflects yourself or something you might have seen in your peers. This is kind of what we had when I first started at PPLD, but I wanted to take it a little bit further. So I put together an online subject guide that's kind of an expanded version of all of these things. It's still branded as Tough Topics, but it has informational pages for some of the different issues the teens might be facing. And I kind of think of it as like a little mini encyclopedia for some of these issues. It includes short video overviews of topics, recommended websites for information, local phone numbers, again, just to reinforce that there are local people that can help you, and some other resources as well. So this was just a way to take our informational resources a little bit further. If you want to take it a step beyond some informational things, I'd suggest looking out into your community for maybe some partnerships that you could think about. There's a couple that we've done here in El Paso County that I think have been pretty beneficial. The first one is I'm a member of the El Paso County Youth Suicide Prevention Working Group, which is a group that's organized through the county public health department. It's an interdisciplinary group that brings together school districts, public health workers, behavioral health workers, therapists. And in total, there's about 66 partner agencies involved and around 24 unaffiliated community members that all come together to work on this issue. I've been on it pretty much since I first started at PPLD about 3 years ago. And in the time that we've been working together, we've trained over 160 youth pastors in youth mental health first aid. And we've also worked to establish a school-based resource network of all the schools in El Paso County, both for information sharing and support on this issue. And if a lot of what I do is work with schools here in the county. So those of you that work with schools know it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to get them to talk to each other. And there are 14 public school districts in El Paso County. So this was no small task, and it was a pretty cool thing to see come together through the work that we did in this working group. And through that working group at the Public Health Department, I also was connected to the local chapter of NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness, as they were putting together an advertising campaign targeted at teens for the Colorado Crisis Services text line. You may have seen some of these posters somewhere. But this was an advertising campaign that was developed through focus groups with teens in El Paso County and Colorado Springs specifically that had experienced some of these high rates of suicide in their schools. And I think it does a great job of succinctly addressing many of the pressures that teens are facing and that you have also brought up in the chat earlier. So through the work group, I connected with NAMI and brought this campaign into all of the teen spaces in all of the buildings in our library district, just as another way to show that we're there to support them and that they can consider the library a safe place for them and whatever they're going through. This campaign was picked up by the State Department of Behavioral Health, I believe in late 2018. So you've maybe seen it in some of your areas, those of you that are in Colorado. And there's also a data dashboard that you could take a look at, again, for those of you in Colorado, where you can see how many people in your county have called into the text line, what kinds of issues they were talking about, and what the results were from their text exchange. So it's a really great idea, a great way to kind of see how this issue is operating in your local area. And finally, kind of the longest and most involved thing that we've done here at PPLD to support mental health with teens is we've joined the National Safe Place Network. If you haven't heard of that before, it's an organization that you join and you can display their signs and stuff like that that say safe place. And any person between 12 and 18 can come into the library and talk to any staff member. And all they have to say is, I need a safe place. And we'll kind of take them to a safe area. We'll contact our partner organization in the community who will send out a volunteer who will come and talk to the teen about what they're facing at that time. They'll outline the steps they can take, talk about them with what's going on, and it's all confidential and free and safe like that. Recently, the YMCA in Colorado Springs also joined the Safe Place Network. So we now have 24 locations where teens can access this help. And the reason I put this one last is because it is a pretty involved process. There's a membership fee and there are marketing benchmarks that you have to reach in order to stay a part of this program. But I do think it is a fantastic way to show that you are there to support the teens in your community and that the library is a trusted, helpful place for them. So I know I talked kind of fast about all those things that we were doing, but it's now your turn again. and we're going to bring up some chat windows. And in these, you can kind of talk about what are or can your libraries doing in your community to help support youth, and what could we maybe do better to connect with the youth in our communities. And feel free to bring in things like our report recommendations and the partnerships and programs we've talked about already.
And
So
Cameron, this is
I'll let you
Christine.
start
I don't know
typing. I
if you
see
know
some
the answer
people
to this
already are.
question or not, but Lauren was asking if there were other counties in Colorado that have similar working groups to what you mentioned at the beginning of your kind of portion. Do you happen to know of any others? We can do some digging, but.
Oop. I think it's lagging behind a little bit. I'll scroll up in the chat window and find it. Oh, I see it. I'm not sure if other counties in the state have a working group like this, but even if they don't, I would maybe suggest reaching out to the public health department in your area, because even if they don't have a group, maybe they're thinking of setting one up, and this could be the catalyst for that. Or they might have more resources and kind of area specific statistics that they can.
And Brenda happened to mention that La Plata County has a working group that they participate in. And Nicole from the Kendrick Memorial Library in Texas is part of the National Safe Place. So excellent.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So in just looking at kind of the chat that's happening in terms of our questions, we've got offering program and clubs for youth in the public library is great. And I think staff training. I think staff training can be a really big thing, which is one of the reasons why we are working on this program. And I think there could be staff training on a whole host of things when it happens to be with teens, in terms of kind of just basic customer service all the way, kind of through. I think sometimes it happens that, if you happen to be the teen librarian at your library, somehow like you're the only one that interacts with teens and other people kind of are maybe off doing other things. Hopefully that's not the case.
I'm
But
seeing
customer
Nick's,
service is for everyone.
I'm seeing Nick's comment on the right-hand chat box about how some public health things end up being like lectures. And I definitely agree with that. And something that we've done with our working group here in the county is make a really big effort to bring a teen voice into the panel. So we've brought in local youth from the LGBT plus group to talk about what they're seeing. We've gotten our tabs involved a little bit. So as much as you can involve the teen voice in the discussion, I think it's fantastic. That's also a big reason why I like the below the surface advertising campaign from NAMI, because it is completely teen driven through focus groups.
And Cameron, do you know what other organizations maybe are also part of the Safe Place Network, at least in your community?
In Colorado Springs, I think it's just the library and the YMCA now. Okay. I haven't seen the signs around town at all. The Safe Place website has a location locator on it that you can use to see if there are any in your zip code. Let's see if I can pull that up.
And looking again kind of at the chat, once again, offering a variety of programs that teens would be interested in, and asking them what sort of programs or events, which once again, sometimes it can feel hit or miss, because even like adults, sometimes teens will tell you what they think that you want to hear, but trying to get teen advisory committees pulled together and those kinds of things, maybe just more teen programming in general. And outreach to the schools, as Andrea mentioned on the right-hand side, lunchtime book clubs. That's awesome. That's a great idea, especially because once again, maybe those are the kids that don't necessarily have friends to eat lunch with or something like that, and if it's a place where once again they can kind of go in their school or and I think partnering is big, as Rachel mentioned. And we're going to say it over and over and over again, libraries aren't going to solve this problem. We're just part of the community conversation because we don't want libraries to have to be burnt out with solving all of the community issues. But partnering with your local mental health providers, partnering to see if you can get training in library. Now I'm like blanking out on the mental health training that is kind of nationwide. It escaped my head. In Colorado, we're going to be providing some mental health training, I want to say at the end of April. Obviously, it's, I can only take 30 people at this training, but be on the lookout for when registration opens for it. Mental health first aid, that's what I was thinking of. And basically, the training that we're going to offer in Colorado is based upon mental health first aid, but we worked with the trainers. It isn't directed specifically at teens, although there is a teen mental health first aid also that you can look for. But we worked with the trainers to kind of tweak things to libraries in conjunction with acceptable use policies. So for those of you who happen to be in Colorado, you can look for that. And Nick can attest that mental health first aid training is great. I have like many places to look at chat now. Brenda's saying, I've heard from adults who have a real heart for teens and suicide prevention, wondered how to appropriately connect people. Realistically, I think it's going to be, and this is just my opinion, so if other people have other opinions, once again, maybe connecting the adults with other agencies that are sort of doing that work versus maybe trying to start sort of something on your own because other organizations are going to have a little bit more sort of maybe marketing and funds and whatnot behind it. Panel discussion at Staff Development Day with representatives from 5 different community organizations that are relevant to the work that they do. That's always good. A couple years ago at one of the workshops, actually, community conversations obviously are becoming big in libraries, but there was, I'm going to say, Poudre River in Colorado. If my memory serves correct, they actually had a series of 4 community conversations that were decided and pretty much run by teens on pretty hard topics. But once again, it was the topics that the teens felt to be relevant, and they basically ran. There were obviously adults there to help, but the community conversations weren't just for teens, but teens were actually providing the conversations. And I actually had them do a webinar for us. So if I can find the URL to the webinar, I'll put that in the chat as well, because there's lots of ways to kind of get teens involved and really kind of getting them talking about some of these issues. And Beth is saying that a lot of youth-related nonprofits are in the Safe Place Network and a variety of shelters.
I've also seen like gas station chains be part of the National Safe Place Network, at least more so in the Midwest, maybe where I'm from. Bus systems sometimes too are safe places.
So feel free to continue kind of sharing your thoughts and ideas. I'm trying to see if I can find that one webinar. If I can't find it, I'll try to post it to the CSL in Session website. But we're kind of nearing the end of our time together. So if you guys have other thoughts that you'd like to have captured in the chat, once again, I can post that to the CSL in Session website. I will be posting the archive later this afternoon of this webinar. So if you know of people who weren't able to attend, have them visit the CSL in Session website maybe in a couple hours. And I will make sure to get the slides posted. And Lisa's said that some branches from Denver have organized outings with teens with transportation organized through the library. So that's kind of something sort of new and different, maybe a different kind of spin on things. So as we wrap up today, once again, if you have any other comments or questions, feel free to put it in the chat. But we really appreciate all of the participation that we got from today's session, kind of talking about a really tough topic. Realistically, what we're hoping is that this is just the beginning of the conversation. Obviously, we haven't, solved the issue, and there's lots of places where we can do more training and more information sharing, but really want you guys to kind of keep the conversation going with people at your library. We also would love to know what you thought about today's session. So there is a URL on the screen for a brief survey, and we would love to have you fill that out. I'll pop the URL in the chat also, because we'd love to know what you thought about today's session and maybe kind of where else we might be able to take this conversation. Lisa also mentioned that Reforma has scholarships for teens to attend the annual Teen Lit Conference in Denver, which is fabulous. So thanks for posting that. And then I will also post the CSL in session URL again, which is where the archive and all of the resources will be in just a little bit. But as we wrap up today's session, once again, I do want to thank all of you for attending. I think we've had some great conversation, some great resources were shared, and I'll make sure to capture those. But I also really want to thank my partners on today's webinar, Beth Christ from the Colorado State Library and Cameron Reisenberger from the Pikes Peak Library District. So once again, if you have other ideas and whatnot to pop in the chat, feel free. Make sure that you take the survey, and then I wish you all a very wonderful rest of your afternoon.